Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, where our job is to help you build visibility, professional credibility, and connection with your ideal client by putting the human at the center of innovative marketing, so you can build and strengthen an engaging, enduring relationship with your ideal clients. I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm honored that you're here with me. If you haven't joined our wonderful marketing transformation community yet, go to innovabiz.co and collect your free gift as well. Do subscribe to the show and also leave a review because it helps others find us. Let's get into today's masterclass on this InnovaBuzz podcast.
Everybody has a network. Everybody has potential around them. Everybody has people in their life that they need to revive those relationships. And my version of reviving a relationship is invest 2 hours and host a virtual dinner with the people that matter the most to you. That to me is the true definition of catching up with somebody, not just a quick 15-minute Zoom call. Hey, how are the kids? Right? So if you can bring your favorite people that you want to go deeper with together in a room where you get to control the ambiance, you get to control the type of conversation, and you get to control the conversations, relationships is the best investment you can make.
Welcome back. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. If you haven't yet listened to my recent conversations with Dave McKeown, author of The Self-Evolved Leader, and with Sean Shepherd of GrowthX, then check them out, but only after you've listened to today's conversation. I'm really excited to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest today, Karan Nijhawan of Jube. He runs dinners to bring teams and entrepreneurs closer together by diving into meaningful and vulnerable conversations. Karan believes that relationships are the best investment you can make and has found a way to create psychological safety, an environment of vulnerability, and to unlock conversations that lead to transformational moments for his participants. In our discussion today, Karan talked to me about why traditional networking events are broken, and it's because they focus so much just on transactions. He explained how he creates the safe environment and enables participants of his events to share meaningful conversations and deep connection. And we discussed the important but often neglected parts of pre-event preparation and post-event follow-up. Without further ado then, let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Karan Nijhawan. Hi, I'm your host Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today from Toronto, Ontario in Canada, Karan Nijhawan, who's the founder of Jube, which stands for Just Be Yourself, and he's also host of the Human to Human podcast, which I had the privilege of being on just recently. Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Karan. It's a real privilege to have you as my guest.
I'm so honored to be here. And something I mentioned to you on our episode on my podcast was it's so fascinating to, 6 months ago, listening to you in the gym while I was working out, listening to your podcast. And now here we are, 6 months later, and I get to be on this end. So I'm just super grateful and super honored to be here.
Yeah, well, we met through George Bryant's Lighthouse Method community probably a month or 6 weeks ago. George, of course, was our guest on episode 226 and episode 300, the last milestone one. So big hello to George.
Hey, George.
And, I had the privilege also of recording an episode of the Mind of George podcast with him yesterday, which went for quite some time. I'm not sure if he's going to break it up into 2 episodes where we just got carried away. So, yeah, big hello to George. But like I say, I've also been privileged to be a guest on the Human to Human podcast, which you host. And the fundamental philosophy of that, as the name suggests, is focus on relationships as opposed to transactions. And I know, your business is around building networks through relationships. So give us a kind of a snapshot of how you got into doing what you do today and how that came about, because I know there's kind of an interesting story there and something that I can certainly relate to, and I'm sure others can too.
Yeah. And when you hear the word networking and network and your tribe, your community, there's all these words that are interchangeable with networking. And 4 years ago, I found myself at a really poor networking event where my value as a human being was really being judged based on the business title on my business card. And I thought that was really backwards, that somebody's perceiving my self-worth as a human being, as a son, as a brother, as a member of society, my well-being, my gift, based on what the title on my business card says. So think about the last networking event you went to and somebody introduced themselves as an accountant. And where does your head go? Hey, well, I already have an accountant. I know what you do. Okay, next, who else is in the room? And I found myself at this really poor networking event where I just felt like everybody was after my wallet. Everybody was after the business card so that the next day they could go into the office and put me in their CRM and follow up with me and book an appointment to sell something. And I just felt like every conversation I had was less of a conversation and felt more like a transaction. And from that moment forward, I vowed never to go to what I would call a traditional networking event ever again. Started hosting my own events in the form of dinners where I would handpick people that I wanted to spend more time with, people that I wanted to get to know better, invite them to a room where there was no business cards allowed, no pitching allowed. You didn't have to wear a blazer or a suit. It was a place to have real, authentic, genuine conversations. And the premise of the dinner was, yes, networking, you're going to meet really cool people, but the real prize at one of these dinners is the quality of the conversation. And a lot of people refer to these dinners as their version of therapy. They're meeting other business owners and entrepreneurs that are going through similar struggles. And it was a place for business owners and entrepreneurs to just come together and have real conversations without pretending like their life is perfect. So one dinner turned into 2, turned into 3, turned into 160 now. And they've taken various forms from in-person to now virtual to working with event organizers and hosting the networking portions of their events. And, I say the word events, I say the word dinners. Really, all I'm doing is giving people a voice that they deserve to have.
And putting them on an equal footing, right? Because in going back to your networking event experience where people make an immediate judgment based on maybe your appearance, your age is a big one, your business card and title, and perhaps who else you're talking to right then and there. So my experience in those events are, if you want to get to meet somebody new and talk to them, you hang out with the people that they will hang out with, and then you kind of ride on the coattails. But all of that is very transactional, right? So you've turned it around, you've removed all those judgment-based things, you've basically prohibited pitches, and then people have to get to know one another at a relationship level, at a deeper level.
Here's the thing. You go to a networking event, A, you probably never wanted to be there in the first place. You just signed up, or maybe you paid to go. B, you're probably going with your best friend. So it's just going to be the two of you hanging out, talking to yourself. C, it's so difficult to go up to a stranger who you don't know. I know that sounds scary, but it's so difficult to go to a stranger that you don't know and actually introduce yourself. And then D is that when you do introduce yourself, you get the question that everybody is expecting. Yeah. What do you do? And you answer that question. Your person that you're meeting for the first time, they answer that question. And then what happens? The conversation typically dies down because it's centered around, again, what do you do for a living? And then I make it an association, or the person makes an association of what I do. And then the conversation kind of fizzles out. And I just found that when you get to know somebody on a very surface level, you're going to have very surface level interactions, whether it's in your personal life, with your spouse, with your parents, with your sister, with your clients, with your prospects, with your community, your tribe. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. If your conversations are not going deep, then by default, they remain at the surface and nothing good happens at the surface.
Yeah. I remember being at one networking event and I only went, it was exactly like you say, I didn't want to be there, but there was going to be this other person that I really wanted to meet. And I thought this is probably my best opportunity to meet this person and I'll try to have a conversation with them. So I went to this event. That person didn't show up for whatever reason. So there I was at the event and I thought, well, I could sort of just sneak out, but that kind of looked too visible. And then somebody came up and asked me exactly that question, hi, I'm Joe, and I introduced myself. I said, I'm Jürgen. He said, what do you do? And I thought, look, I don't really give a stuff right now because my objective was to meet this one person who clearly isn't here for whatever reason. So I thought, I don't really care. So I said, well, I spend as much of my day as possible riding my bike. And of course, that wasn't the answer he was expecting. And it then prompted a follow-up question, and then we actually had a conversation about bike riding, and I turned it around and said, well, what do you do when you want to enjoy yourself, and learned about his hobbies. And then we actually ended up with a much deeper conversation. And at some point, I think we switched the conversation to what's your business about? But it was kind of like there was a bit of a relationship already started before we got to that point.
And you probably felt like friends by that point, right? It went from the classic, what do you do, to almost a way of asking, what has got you excited these days? How do you spend your days? What's got you the most energized? And you answered with a bike. That person now has one of two options. Oh my God, I love to bike, or oh my God, I don't bike, but I'm looking to get back into it. And it makes the conversation human. I can relate to somebody biking. I can tell you stories about bike crashes. I can tell you stories about me doing wheelies. I can tell you stories about my sister still not being comfortable on a bike and she's almost 30, right? It gives me so much conversation to have when you don't lead with what do you do?
Yeah, that's right. So with the dinners, how big are they typically? I mean, you talked about starting the dinners, you invited a bunch of friends, and how did it grow from there? I guess first question.
The dinners started off small and then they got bigger, but let me tell you kind of the model that works the best. So when I started doing dinners, it was really on this concept of you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And I looked at my 5 people and I wasn't overly happy. So my intention was, if I surround myself with 5 other people that are further ahead than me, have more experience than me, have more wisdom than me, have more experience than me, have a bigger resume than me, then slowly, if I'm the dumbest guy in the room, I'm going to start to level up because I'm going to start to hang out with superstars. So the majority of my dinners have always been me plus 5 people, so a group of 6, because again, I was of the impression you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Slowly, the dinners started getting a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. When I do these at restaurants, I always try to get a private room in the restaurant because it's a little bit more intimate. You can have better conversations. So my biggest in-person dinner for myself has been about 24. My biggest in-person dinner for some of my clients have been in that 50, 60 range. And now that I'm doing them virtually, I've had groups of 55, 60, 70. I have one tomorrow with just about 30. Now, this virtual age, because of Zoom and technology, I'm able to replicate, I would say 95% of the in-person experience and intimacy and vulnerability. I'm able to replicate that online. So in person, after, about 20 or so people, it starts to lose its intimacy. So I like small tables. I like small groups of 6 to 10. I find it's one conversation and not many conversations.
Yeah, well, I've been on one of your events, which was a virtual event, which is where we met. And I was curious, how do you, so in the virtual event, and I'll get you to describe how it works, but there's sessions where you break people out into rooms of 3 and those 3 people have a conversation and they've got, a reasonably generous amount of time to have a really deep conversation, although that time flies, was my experience. But how do you do that in the in-person thing? So you've got small tables of 6, say, do you break those up even more, or do you have the conversation within the table?
So it's generally within the table in person. But I think what I like most about what you said was, how do you actually replicate that intimacy virtually when you have more than 10, 20, 30 people? Most people in today's world are spending more time behind their screens. They're going to more webinars. They're going to more Zoom meetings. They're going to more conferences, virtual speaking events. And the problem with a lot of online events right now is that they're all about the organizer. They're all about the content. It feels like a webinar.
Yeah.
And even when I say the word webinar, a part of me is like, ugh, that means I got to sit down. I got to take notes. I can turn my camera off. I can be doing laundry at the same time. I can be cooking my lunch while I'm tuning into this webinar. Send me the replay.
Yeah. And there's going to be a pitch at the end.
And there's going to be a pitch at the end. So what I like to do is right away at all my events now, everybody has their camera on the entire time. So number one, you're already being intimate because you can see everyone else. You can hear everyone else. With the use of breakout rooms, you're able to take a room of 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 and break them down into smaller rooms of groups of 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6, and more. But I like to create breakout rooms with about 2 to 5 people at a time because it makes that bigger event feel more human. Again, of this concept of you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with, even if you're in a large group, if I can bucket you into groups of 5 and 6, then I know from a conversation standpoint, it's going to get intimate very quickly. The other thing you said was time flies because you're having a conversation. And the thing that I make sure in every breakout room and at every dinner is that you're going into these breakout rooms with a very targeted and primed question that all of you have to answer. So imagine going into a breakout room without any context. It'd be super awkward. You'd be meeting 2 strangers. One person's cat might be yelling. You'd say, hey guys, like, what brought you to the event? How do you know Karan? What do you guys do? It'd be super awkward. But if I tell you before you go into the room, hey, the question you all need to ask each other in this breakout room is, as you've gotten older, what's become more important in your life and what's become less important in your life? Then the depth of that conversation when you go in is very targeted, it's very focused, and it's going to get deep and intimate very quickly. And the way I structure the events is that every conversation in every breakout room, my intent is that the conversation gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper to the point where, I would say proudly 80 to 90% of my dinners have tears. They have people crying, people get emotional, and I welcome that. I don't think it's something to shy away from. I get emotional at my own events now. Maybe it's an age thing. Well, as I'm getting older, I'm crying more at my own events. I don't know. It's super weird.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I have to put my hand up and say I cried at your event, and the question was, who has inspired you the most? What one person, I think you said, has inspired you the most? And I was in tears when I told my little group of 3 my answer to that question, and then you called on me to give feedback to the room, and I sort of broke up again then.
Here's the thing though. See, while you were in the breakout room, I didn't know that you might have shed tears.
Yeah.
I had no way of knowing. Sometimes people kind of lose it right then and there. There's other, aspects of a dinner where I like to tell people every 15 minutes of the dinner has a very curated plan by me. From the music that gets introduced, that's playing lightly in the background, to when you answer that question and I play this very emotional song, cue waterworks, really. So there's all these little tactics and strategies to make the experience all about you as the guest, all about you as the participant. If I could put you in a time that brings you back to a memory of you and your mom, or your first day of school, or your first business, or your first breakup, or your first test that you failed, or your first business that you launched, if I can help bring you back to some of those memories, and you're in a room where it feels safe, it feels vulnerable, there's no pitches, there's literally no business cards, everyone is there for the concept of human connection, then things get intimate pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, I guess that's one of the questions on my mind is, how do you set up the environment where people come in as total strangers, but they feel completely safe to open up to that level and be really vulnerable?
I love this question, and I think it's the first time I've ever been asked this question, which I love even more. So I've now done, over the past 3.5, 4 years, about 160 of these different types of experiences, whether it's a dinner, whether it's working with an organizer, whether it's now virtual dinners or for companies. the biggest thing is transparency. Every dinner is super transparent. And here's what I mean by that. Here's the key ingredient that makes every single event feel very vulnerable and authentic from the moment I hit start. Prior to the events, I send out a survey or a form. And in those forms, I ask questions like, what's keeping you stuck right now in life? Or where do you need the most support right now? Or what are 3 words you're using to describe this week? Or what's the one thing that's really scary or top of mind for you right now? And I ask all these questions. And during the dinner, anonymously, I open the night, I open the event with these very real, raw, transparent answers. I don't say who said what. I never mention names. I say, hey, everyone, welcome to tonight's event. I've been doing a lot of these, and the key ingredient is transparency. Here's what you guys said on the surveys. And then I show them the full list of responses. I show them, and then in the chat or in person, I say, hey, raise your hand if any of this resonates with you. So if my first slide on a virtual dinner is, here's where everyone is feeling stuck right now: job loss, unhealthy relationship, poor diet, poor sleep, losing money, got let go of their job, got fired last week. And I share all these things, and all of a sudden, while you are, quote, a stranger in the room, you start to feel like, holy crap, I'm not actually alone here. Other people are actually going through something as well, because we always think that we've got the most unique story, we've got the hardest, we've got the toughest heartaches, nobody could possibly understand what I'm going through. And then I share these responses from the surveys, and everyone's like, oh my God, like, I'm in the right room, I'm meant to be here. And then the next question is, where do you want to be a year from now? And then I start to share where they want to be a year from now. So you hear incredible answers like, I hope I'm holding my 2 babies, or I hope to be living in a different country, or I hope I get to make 6 figures this year. I hope I get to hire my first teammate. I hope my course sales gets 50 course sales. And you start to, again, you bring people together over the difficulties, but also with the amazing things that they want to accomplish in the next year. And when you set that context up front with the energy that I bring just because I love talking about relationships, right away, everyone feels this sense of ease. They feel a sense of camaraderie, connection. And it's because I lead with that open transparency, saying, hey, this night is about you. There's nothing to sell here. And this is what you all said in the survey. Take a look. And then I say, hey, who here can relate to this? And then the chat features go crazy. Everyone's like, oh, me, that's me. Oh, I can relate to that. Or, oh, Jürgen said that. Oh my God, I can totally relate. Like I had the exact same experience. And I create this connection that before the night even begins, you already feel like you're meant to be and you are in the right room.
Yeah. Well, the other thing you did in the event I was on is you kind of called people to action at the beginning and said, here's what's going to happen in the room, and it is going to require a level of vulnerability. And you went through a couple of other things, and you said, if you're not up for that, you can leave now, no hard feelings, nobody's doing roll call or something like that.
And you know what? That's honestly something I'm stepping into lately. I'm finding more of who I am. I'm discovering who Jube is, what the business stands for. And the more events that I do, I feel like the more flexible I'm becoming with my own business and the more honest and real I'm becoming. Because I've been in enough rooms where I'm not treated like a person. I'm treated like an opportunity, or I'm treated like up someone's pipeline for the future. And I've been in enough of these rooms that I truly don't have time to have those types of conversations if I'm just being pitched and prospected 24/7. So you're right. Up front, I make it very clear that, hey, this is a very transparent event. Here's the survey responses. P.S. If you don't want to be here, now is the perfect time to leave. And I still love you. And we'll see you again at a future event. But now would be a great time to hit that leave button on the bottom. Now, I can't do that at an in-person dinner, but again, with the in-person dinners, I handpick who I'm inviting. I handpick. So there's already a level of, okay, I know Jürgen is a quality person, and I know that he's only got one layer, which is deep. He's the perfect fit for a dinner.
Okay. Now, with the dinner, you mentioned breakout rooms, and that makes a lot of sense because you want to minimize distractions and that. But how do you go about setting up the dinner in real life? And this is, for the times when COVID will be gone and we can start to do things like meet people in real life for dinners and at restaurants.
Yeah, listen, I miss my dinners. I miss that in-person hugs, the handshakes, the camaraderie, the passing of the plates, the sharing of the wine. There's something human and tribal about us passing food around the table and all sharing from the same plates and the same meals. There's something really powerful and amazing from a connection standpoint. Now, how I replicate that, obviously there's no breakout rooms at a restaurant. There's just you and a table. Here's how I do it. I go around the table, I introduce everyone, and all of them answer the exact same 3 questions. They all answer the exact same 3 questions. The first question is, as you've gotten older, what's become more important in your life and what's become less important? The second question could be something like, what memory instantly makes you happy? And the third question is, what's your biggest personal win in the last 60 days? And it can't be work related. And everybody, a group of 6, group of 10, group of 12, everybody answers that question. So you get a real sense of what someone's values are. If I know what's become more important in your life and it's books and self-development and your health, I'm like, oh my God, I got to connect with this guy, Jurgen, because I'm totally of the same mindset. Whereas if I led the conversation with, hey guys, this is Jurgen, he runs a podcast, he can get you on other shows, then I would bucket you as, quote, a podcaster.
Yeah, the podcast guy. Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to bucket you in that category because that's not fair, nor is it right. And you've got so much more to offer than just being, quote, the podcast guy. So I create, again, that sense of level playing field where everyone goes through the same questions. And then towards the end of the night, I do this thing called roses, buds, and thorns. And every person at the table has to share a rose, meaning something positive, beautiful, flourished that's happening in their life. It could be personal or it could be business. Then everyone shares a bud. And a bud is an opportunity that one day with more love, water, nourishment, feedback could turn into a rose. And then the focus of the night goes to everyone's thorns. And thorns are those little buggers that keep you up at night. Sometimes they're really deep and sometimes they're just on the brink of being pulled out. And my intent of all my dinners is that you walk away with your thorn either completely plucked out or at least make it not sting as deep.
Yeah, and if there's the opportunity, because if you talk about, well, this is the thing that's really bugging me right now, it's really getting me down, and there's somebody else there that says, well, hey, I know how to deal with that, I've dealt with that myself, or I can help you deal with that in some way, then that's where the genuine connection goes to that level of, maybe there's business to be done there. Maybe it's just a simple, I'll help you because we shared this moment or this dinner and we had a deep, meaningful connection here. But the paradox of these traditional networking things is that your model that's based on relationships is probably likely to lead to a lot more opportunities.
The amount of, business that has come out of it for my guests, for me, the amount of deals that happen that I find out like 6 months later, I'm like, oh, Jurgen, you met Daniel, you guys started doing business together? I had no idea. But that's so beautiful. I love hearing about those stories after the fact. And then, I connect everyone the next day via email, or we always get a group photo together. And now the beautiful thing about Facebook is it gives you that 1-year memory reminder. So, a year later, you're able to see that photo, kind of revive that conversation. It also gives you an extra touch point saying, oh, Jurgen, that was a year ago. I haven't connected with you in a while. How have things been? Right? It starts to become this family. And now if you look at my Facebook or my Instagram or my website, the majority of the photos are just dinners. There's virtual dinners. There's dinners at restaurants. There's dinners at my house. I never thought I'd have a business based around eating food and asking questions.
Yeah, I like what you said about the connection that's built around the dinner table, passing food, sharing and sharing wine. And one of my clients is a family therapist, and her whole basis of bringing families together is based around that whole concept. She says, in our family, we get together at the dinner table, we have a nice meal, we share that meal, and that's where the meaningful conversations happen. And if we've got an issue to deal with as a family, we'll get together at the dinner table and have that discussion. and that's how she's built her business. It's kind of the whole metaphor of that dinner table. So I really like that, and I can see how that adds a lot of value.
I love that. And the phone and the cell phone is probably one of the most powerful tools that we all have, but it's also one of the most powerful distractions that we all have. And if you're at dinner eating a table, number one, you're completely disconnected from the conversation and from the food. And number two, you're just looking down the entire time. So at my dinners, I make it very clear up front, if this is an in-person dinner, cell phones do not come out. We get a group photo at the end. If you have an absolute emergency, you actually leave the room and you take your call or your text messages or whatever that is. And strategically, this is going to be interesting. I've never shared this, but sometimes I pick restaurants in a basement where there is no service. So I'll go to the restaurant in advance and I'll go check out their private room and I'll be like, perfect, I don't have service now.
That's very good.
It definitely adds to that. It definitely adds to just that connection piece, right? Imagine how distracting it would be it's already so distracting. If you're talking to your friend and they're on their phone, you're like, are you even listening to me?
Yeah.
Or if your partner at home, or if your dad, or if your mom, your sister is like, they're listening, but are they really listening? Because they're on their phone on Facebook or Instagram. So I think it's just it's not professional, number one. It's rude in other ways. And it's just a big distraction. So most of these private rooms also, I try to keep the lights a little bit more dim so it's not super bright. And with that dim light, there's little to no music in the background in these rooms. There's candles. It makes for a very intimate experience. And I would say, at all of my dinners, maybe there's been 2 situations where somebody has had their phone out on the table. Everyone knows in advance the phone's going in the pocket on do not disturb.
Well, actually, you reminded me that you said something about music. And you reminded me that I was going to follow up on your comment earlier about the selection of music going through the thing and the 15-minute blocks, how you've planned the whole thing out. So tell us a little bit more about how you plan out those 15-minute blocks and all the bits and pieces that go into it.
I think, again, I try to make my events kind of the anti-webinar. And again, I refer you back to, think about the last webinar you were on. It was a one-way dialogue, one-way conversation. There was somebody presenting a slideshow. There was very little chat features. There was no breakout rooms. It was very one-sided. And I think a lot of conversation today, unfortunately, is one-sided. Is the other person on the screen, the keynote, the presentation, it's all them speaking to a bunch of people. And I'm a big fan of engagement. And my job at a virtual event is, how can I allow you to feel your 5 senses? How can I get you to smell something? How can I get you to hear something, taste something, see something, hear something? So the way I plan my dinners is just like a story. It's got a beginning, it's got a middle, and it's got an end. And I think about most stories kind of start off a little bit rough, then they get a bit better, and then they get a little bit rough, and then there's this climax. So the way my questions are structured is I pair the music. And again, a lot of people don't know that a dinner is so much more than a dinner. There's so many intricacies of a well-executed event, from the music to the food, to the conversations, to the types of questions, to the breakout rooms, to the length, to what music gets played. So I try to pair the music to the vibe of the question, of the emotion that I'm trying to invoke. So if I'm asking you to think about somebody who's meant a lot to you and they've made you the person you are today, and what's the top thing you would thank them for? And then you come back and there's this really inspiring music playing and you're thinking about that person. Now you're tying the music back to your hero, who that person is. And there's just this connection. Whereas if you had come back and I was playing electronic house music and it felt like a party, it would completely take you out of that emotional state. So very strategically, when people are coming back from breakout rooms, there's music, and always different music waiting for them in the breakout room. And naturally, some people start to cry, other people start to dance based on what question it is. And it turns into this experience. And the last dinner I did, my first dinner ever, we ended last week with a virtual dance party at the end. It was so cool. It was super amazing. We put on Happy, the song Happy by Pharrell. And everyone's, that song, because I'm happy. And we had 40 people on the screen just dancing and closing out their night. It was so beautiful. And again, it's like, people connect over food, but I would say they also connect over music.
Yeah, that's great. So how do you bring in the sense of Well, I guess the sense of touch, the movement brings in the sense of touch, doesn't it? How do you bring in the
Yeah,
sense of,
that's the most difficult one right now.
well, the
Is
sense of
how do I?
smell? How do you bring in
The
the,
smell is. I generally at these dinners, I will ask the participants to have either wine or a drink
okay.
or food in front of them. So, I mean, that's the piece that I rely on them for. Now, I've had clients where in advance of the dinner, my clients, what we'll do is we'll actually send out a week before the event, we'll send out like a Uber Eats or some sort of delivery gift card.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll say, hey guys, the night of the dinner, order food on us.
Mm.
And have it present for you during the meal. So then, dinner starts at 7, 6:30, their doorbell rings, they've got somebody with a food delivery. Like, oh my God, Jurgen sent us food. And now it connects you to them on such a deeper level that because you've gone above and beyond, you've already taken care of their meal for the night. One of the most stressful things for most families is what's for dinner tonight? And you've already got that taken care of. So, and again, that could have the smell, maybe even the touch. I've had people, send out chicken wings in advance so things get dirty. You can have a lot of fun with it.
Well, there's lots of innovative things you're doing there clearly in transitioning the whole dinner idea to the virtual space, which, and I love it. And I guess one of the things it allows you to do, and there's lots of people are seeing this now that haven't been working in the virtual space before and are forced to do it now because they can't meet in person. They're now suddenly seeing, wow, there's actually opportunities here. And one of the big ones I see is, you're no longer limited by geography. You can reach a much bigger audience across the entire planet, really.
I'll say this, there's been a ton of amazing opportunity that I never thought I would be able to do because prior to us working virtually, I had to fly to events where I would curate their dinners or their networking portions of their event. And that was great. But when the flights got shut down, borders got closed, the virtual space started to happen, there was a sense of panic. I didn't know what to do. I felt like my business was going to completely die down. I felt like my entire industry was screwed. So there was this sense of like, oh my God, what do I do? I can't host events and my business relies on events. So there was this interesting couple of days of I didn't know what to do. And although there is this opportunity to connect people geographically, like you're in Australia and you were at a dinner of mine, like how cool is that? We had people in California, in Italy, in Canada, in the US, all at the same dinner. Now, the difficulty with that, and I will say it has been difficult because it's such a new concept, because it's such a new idea, connecting people digitally over dinner and what the power of conversation is. I still find myself in some conversations where people just don't get it. They don't understand how the dinner will be valuable. They don't understand the importance of relationships and bringing people together. So again, there is opportunities, but there are obstacles and difficult conversations that I'm having on a day-to-day basis, really trying to drive home this idea of connection in a virtual age.
Yeah, I guess perhaps it's looking at some of the benefits that might come out of that. And one of the things I know you do work for internal teams on kind of team building, and basically you run the same event with that internal team, and the outcome of those deepening those relationships is the team building. And the other one I thought of as you were talking about the Uber Eats was there's lots of wineries that are doing virtual wine tastings now. So their business has dried up because a lot of it was walk-ins to their winery and wine tasting and tours and whatnot. So they're sending out wines and they have a virtual tasting on Zoom. And I've seen a couple of really good ones where the winemaker is actually there and does a Q&A. And some of the big wineries that wouldn't be possible in person. So there's actually an opportunity there. But maybe it's taking some of those things where people see, okay, wine tasting, yeah, I can relate to that. I'll go along to that because I'm interested. And you turn that into a networking event built on the back of the wine tasting and sharing that experience. Or, the team workforce one is certainly one that would work well in terms of presenting it in a different context, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some teams and some company cultures that are really strong, it's a well-knit team, they're connected, they've got a good CEO or a founder or head of human resources who understands that culture is important, it's a no-brainer for them. For them, they totally get it. It's aligned. It's that human resources has always been this antiquated position, and now it's really, it's really evolved in the last 10 years, this concept of human resources. It's not just hiring and recruiting and benefits anymore. Now it's all about employee happiness, productivity, retention. And unfortunately, a lot of companies still have that old school mentality of, okay, as long as Jurgen comes to work, he'll get paid every 2 weeks. He'll get his 3 weeks vacation. And of course he's going to be happy. What do you mean our culture sucks, right? So there's so many motivators that teams and employees have today outside of just compensation and perks. And I think it's those companies that are innovative, that are willing to roll the dice on a virtual event.
All right. So what's next for you then as we navigate through this COVID time, and what have you got planned longer term when we all get back to some semblance of normal?
Yeah, right now, for the last 100 days or so, probably even longer, I've been all in on these virtual events. So my biggest priority right now is hosting events for myself, hosting events for clients, people that have communities, people that really want to deepen their communities, and then hosting events for companies and their internal teams, as well as some of their best customers as a customer retention and customer loyalty aspect. So that's where all my energy is going. And about 3 months ago, I actually created my first digital course. And it's really what I would call the blueprint on how to build your network. So it's everything I've learned over 3 years and 160 plus dinners, how to find a restaurant, how to host virtual events, the scripts that I use for invites, how to monetize the dinners, how to build a community around it. So I'm putting a lot of energy now behind my digital course, which is very new to me, to be able to sell something while it doesn't require my time. So I'm new to the course world, but of the students that are in that program, I'm getting really good feedback and good results. So yeah, really just trying to make that course bigger and better and introduce new modules as I'm learning kind of on the fly of what to do if restaurants never open again.
Yeah, well, let's hope that doesn't happen. But well, so that's wonderful. I've had a look at the course outline and your landing pages and that, and I think that's, you're going about it beautifully, because you've got the structure there, and you've got like the initial cohort, and clearly transparent that this is the first go around and it's going to improve from here. So kudos to you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you. One of the question that I get asked the most in life is, Karan, how do I host a dinner? The next question is, Karan, how do I host a dinner if I don't have a network?
Yeah.
The third question is, hey, Karan, how do I host a dinner if I don't have a network? I'll never know what to say. It's going to be really awkward at dinner. So I've taken all these questions, all the questions that I get on a weekly basis, even till today, and I've just directed them now to this course. And I think everybody has a network. Everybody has potential around them. Everybody has people in their life that they need to revive those relationships. And my version of reviving a relationship is invest 2 hours and host a virtual dinner with the people that matter the most to you. That to me is the true definition of catching up with somebody, not just a quick 15-minute Zoom call. Hey, how are the kids?
Yeah.
Right. So if you can bring your favorite people that you want to go deeper with, together in a room where you get to control the ambiance, you get to control the type of conversation, and you get to control the conversations, relationships is the best investment you can make. So I'm not a big fan of running paid media, paid traffic to get leads, to get prospects. I always tell clients, host more dinners.
And you talked about starting off with 5 people, and I'm sure everybody knows 5 people that they could bring along to that. And then one of the things to do is, if you knock it out of the park, say, well, who else would you suggest comes along to this event?
The easiest way to do that is plan a dinner with you and 4 other people. Karan, but I don't have 4 other people. Perfect. So really you plan a dinner with you and 2 other people, and then you ask those 2 to bring a person that you might not know. Now all of a sudden you got a group of 5. You have this amazing event. The next day you connect with all 5 of them, say, hey, I'm going to do this again in a month. Who else should I invite? Yeah. They each recommend one person. Now you've got a dinner of 10. The next month, you do this again. Fast forward 4 years, and maybe you can turn it into a business as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's exactly the principle I use on this podcast. I mean, you know by now that I'm going to ask the question at the end, who else should I have on the show? And I've had, I think this is going to be episode 334. And I've probably had over 300 people that I'd never met before on the show.
I'm going to give you another person that you've probably never met before. And I'm actually going to recommend for your future podcast my girlfriend, Brandy Lifeso. She has got an amazing journey. She lived in and out of the shelter system. She lived in a safe house. And while she was living in these very uncomfortable conditions, she actually started a makeup line. She started a makeup company while living in a women's shelter. And as she would say, grew it from $15 and a laptop to, I think last year, a $15 million valuation. Mm. So she's got a very unique story. She's kind of the definition of grit, the definition of perseverance, and is definitely one that keeps pushing me forward in life. So I would recommend Brandy.
Right. All right. Well, I just used that as an example there. I was going to ask at the end, but we'll definitely have Brandy on the show. Okay. Now, I think it's a good point to move on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round now. And as you know, it's designed to help our audience who are primarily leaders in their field and innovators with some tips from your experience. So I've got 5 questions, and hopefully you'll inspire the audience to go and do something awesome today as a result.
Amazing. Hopefully I can deliver.
So what do you think the number one thing is anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
The number one thing to become more innovative, I feel like, is adding more video touch to your business. Every touch point that you have with your clients, with your prospects, with your people that are one day going to sign with you, if they're just getting emails or if they're seeing you behind social media, if you're not on video, if you're not sending video messages individually to people, if you're not sending video emails, I think you're going to get lost. Right now, of course, video consumption is even higher than ever before. So if you want to stand out in any marketplace, I truly feel like sending somebody a video message is going to help you break through that noise.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I'm doing a lot more of that now. And there's so many tools around that make it really easy that basically, I mean, you have to have a webcam, but all you do is click a button, hit record, and say something. And it only needs to be a minute or two. No need to go to great lengths to script something, have a nice clear background and nice front lighting, and you're away.
Jürgen, when was the last time you received a video email?
I don't remember.
Exactly. Yep. So that's perfect. I'm so grateful that went my way. So think about, the people that are listening to this. When was the last time you got a video email? And if it's the same response that Jürgen just had, then imagine your clients, your prospects, the people that you care about the most, imagine them getting a video from you, actually seeing a person behind the brand, a person behind the business. Talk about relatability. So want to become more innovative, show more of your face via video to the people that matter the most to you.
I always follow up, and I'm giving away a secret here. I always follow up a week after the show with my guests so I follow up the immediately afterwards or on the same day with the thank you email, just a written email. And a week later or within the week, I'll send them a video email, just thanking them, sort of talking about some of the highlights for me of our conversation and more or less inviting them to stay in touch with me. And you won't believe how many people come back and say, that is so amazing. In fact, I had some very high profile people that have come back and said, what a touch of class. And I thought, I was actually a bit scared to send that one because I had, the imposter syndrome was there in my head telling me, who am I to send this person a message? But that it actually really connects. So great advice.
Think about it. When you send somebody a video, when somebody gets a video, They get to see you. They get to see what your background is. They get to see what clothing you're wearing. They get to see whether or not you're smiling. They get a sense of your tone. Are you happy or are you just hiding behind an email? They get to hear your voice. They get to look into your eyes. There's so many aspects of communication that get lost in an email or worse, a text message that can be avoided altogether by a simple, to your point, 30-second, 60-second video where you just say, hey, you say their name, record for 15, 20, 30 seconds and end it and send it off. And there's so many free tools out there. I could list you 10 free services, but let me just name 2, vidyard.com, loom.com. And I'm just going to stop there because I don't even want you to get too many options. Just pick one of those 2 free ones and send your first video message today.
That's right. Yeah. And both, I use Loom quite a lot, and there's dub.com. There's a good one too, but yeah, we don't overwhelm.
Don't even confuse the people. Just give them 2 options.
All right. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
The best thing I've done to develop new ideas, I would say, is ask the question, I don't know, more than ever before. I grew up in a house, I grew up in an environment where if you said I didn't know, you were considered stupid or you were considered less than. And I shied around that question and I hid behind that question a lot. So I'm not copping out of this question. I truly feel like as I've gotten older, I'm saying I don't know more, and I'm okay not knowing the answer. I'm okay not knowing more. I could tell you, like I go for walks and I take long showers and that's where I get my brilliant ideas. I spend less time behind my screen. And I ask myself, what do I really want? Not what others are expecting me to build or what others are expecting me to create. So honestly, I just have introduced the words I don't know more into my vocabulary, and I'm actually super grateful for it.
Yeah. And then being open to what people tell you, I guess, being curious, what do you think as a follow-up? Yeah. All right. Now, do you have a favorite resource that you use a lot?
Favorite resource, I do send hundreds of video emails on a monthly basis, and I do use Vidyard for that. Again, there's a free version, there is a paid version. Honestly, the free version is just as good. And again, I want to tie it back to the first question is like video emails, I think are going to be a bigger part of everyone's business going forward, whether it's on your customer service, whether it's on your complaints, whether it's onboarding, whether it's keeping loyal customers, whether it's milestones in a customer's journey with you. I mean, you've had Joey Coleman on a podcast, he talks about how to never lose a customer again. And he's all about how do you wow your customer after the transaction. So I think, he's got some gold there. He's got some gold on where can you introduce more video into your touch points with your dream clients and your dream customers. So Vidyard is the tool I use quite a bit. And if I'm on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, all of those platforms have a native video feature. So you don't even need to use a third party. You can just send the video right then and there through the platform and it works great. So my favorite tool is free. It's on everybody's smartphone and it's a video camera.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. You can actually use them for things like phone calls and video calls too. You can do a direct video call through the phone.
I love FaceTiming people randomly out of the blue.
Okay, now what's the best way to keep a client on track?
Best way to keep a client on track, I think, is to build the future with them and not just propose your ideas, not just propose a solution, but have a two-way dialogue and two-way conversation every step of the way. The second thing is that's been working really well for me is weekly accountability. Sticking to what you said you were going to do a week ago, having weekly meetings in your calendar to talk about the objective, to talk about the milestones. The worst thing you can do as a business owner is think you're doing an amazing job. And little do you know, your client on the other end is wondering why you haven't reached out or where the deliverables are or what the status looks like. I send all my clients weekly meetings leading up to their event and then a post-event debrief call. Every step of the way, they know what's happening in the back end. And, taking a page out of Joey Coleman's book, I send a lot of handwritten letters to clients during onboarding. So again, 30 days after someone's been on my podcast, or 10 days after my podcast, Jürgen, you have something coming in the mail, by the way. So, and I just gave away one of my secrets. So yeah, I think, the best way to keep a client on track is really to build what the future looks like with them. So it's more of a two-way integration and not just you being a vendor and them being a customer.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's so much gold in that. And it all comes back to relationships again. And the relationship, I mean, what I love in particular, and that's what I love about Joey Coleman's work too, is that the relationship doesn't stop when the sale's made, which is what the kind of the old school traditional marketing and sales methodology, well, it doesn't necessarily preach it, but it kind of practices that. All right. Now, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
To differentiate themselves, man, I want to say video
email.
Yeah, I want to say video again. I would say every day, every week, share the struggles that you're going through publicly. I think people connect with businesses, they connect with business owners, they connect with you as a person when they know you're also going through struggles, you're also going through heartaches. Again, I don't want to just say this cliche of, everyone posts their highlight reels on Instagram and they post the best things happening on Facebook. The people that I really connect with and that I resonate with are the people that are also sharing their struggles that they're going through. The ones articulating that life's not perfect, the ones talking about their therapy sessions, the ones talking about being in a state of depression. Not that I enjoy that stuff. It's just that it makes it relatable. It makes me see the person more like a person and less like a business. And when I can connect with somebody on a business level, and I think when it comes to innovation, again, business is just human to human interactions. And when you can relate to somebody as a person, the fact that you have been so kind to me in our 4 interactions, I want to be a part of your life forever. And I want the same thing. I want you to be a part of my life forever. And not once have we really talked about like business. We just talked about, we're just like 2 friends having a good conversation. So what makes this more relatable to me is that we've always talked about relationships, and there's never been this pushy pitch from either of us about, hey, you should do this or you should do that. It's always been, how can I add value to you? The next thing I'll say to really differentiate yourself, and Jürgen, you're actually one of the best at this, is when you say you're going to make introductions, you do it. When you say, hey, Karan, I'm going to connect you with so-and-so, within 24 hours, I've got an email waiting in my inbox. And a friend of mine, Michael Roderick, who I think has also recently been on your show, he's also amazing when it comes to relationships. And one of the things he said to me was that when you, and he's really good at this too, is when you tell someone you're going to do something for them, do it right away or it's never going to get done. So something you do really well that immediately differentiated you from all the other 60 emails in my inbox is that you were actually doing what you promised to me you would, whereas 99% of people never do.
Yeah, and it's like you say, I mean, I find myself falling into that trap from time to time. I say, I'll get to that later, and then it gets forgotten, or I procrastinate over it because I'm a master procrastinator. and
later never happens.
Later never happens, exactly. Yeah, so it's kind of not that people don't have the motivation to do it, or when they say they're going to do it, they don't have the intention and not to do it. It's just that unless you get straight onto it, it's a bit like planting a tree, isn't it? The best time was the best time was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now.
Totally.
All right. Well, this has been absolutely fabulous, Karan. So where can people reach out to find out more about you, find out more about the new course you've got going and your events, and maybe even get in touch and say thanks for what you've shared with us today?
Yeah, I would love that. The best place to find me, I'm all over Instagram at Let's Jube, which is really just stands for Let's Just Be. And I've used 40 questions in the last 4 years that have led to incredible conversations. Just these 40 questions, if you were to ask your clients, your prospects, your mom, your dad, your sister, 40 questions that I've used to nurture all the relationships in my life, at relationshipscreatemagic.com. There's a free download of these 40 questions. And I promise you if you download this file and you're serious about investing in your relationships and you actually ask those questions, it's like anything. Don't just download a PDF and let it sit in your email. Don't just buy a book and never read it. It's only download this file if you're willing to invest in those relationships and ask people genuine questions. Relationshipscreatemagic.com for that. And other than that, my website is jube.ca, because represent Canada.
Excellent. So normally I moved on to my final question at this point, but I thought I'd turn the tables here and I'll use one of those questions, and I'll use the one you open with today, actually. So as you've gotten older, what's become important in your life and what's become less important?
I think great question, by the way. I think what's become more important in my life is being okay in the downtime of life, being okay in the silence, being okay with not just feeling like every hour needs to be optimized and every hour needs to be productive. I'm very type A. And when there's a gap in my calendar, I sometimes struggle. I don't know what to do. I feel like I need to fill that space with a podcast or a live stream or something. And what that really does, I think, is just it keeps you on this wheel of like being busy and busy and busy, but not actually productive. So as I've gotten older, I'm starting to be more patient and being okay with the downtime that I have and actually looking forward to it as a sense of recharging. And what's become less important to me is, I think, the filter that I used to put on conversations, because I didn't want to ruffle feathers. I didn't want to say something that I shouldn't. I didn't want to speak my truth because I didn't want to be that guy. I think what's become less important is having this filter on. So the majority of the time, my filter now is just off. I am who I am, whether I'm talking to you or my girlfriend or my clients or people on a live stream, is I'm going to come at you with one level of Karan, and that's who Karan is. And there's just no filter. And what I'm finding is that I'm feeling more like myself, and it's forcing people to really resonate with me on a personal level because there is no more filter. So more important is being okay in the downtime. Less important is this need of feeling like you need to have a filter.
Yeah, I love it. So there's a couple of things there, really. I mean, we could have a whole hour conversation about that, because I think I can really emphasize with the downtime thing. I'm still the person who, some people say go on a holiday and lie by the pool all day and read a book. Now I can do the read a book bit, but just lying there and doing nothing, particularly if it's overseas in a new location, I've got to be out and about and seeing as much as I can and taking it in. So yeah, I'm always go. So I can relate to that, and also the idea of putting a filter on. And I had a conversation with Dr. Richard Orby Austin just recently, and he's published a book, Own Your Own Greatness, or something like that. And it's talks all about imposter syndrome, and those filters sometimes come out of this imposter syndrome the conversation going on inside our head, where we think, what's that person going to think of me if I say this or if I do that?
And where is the place you get judged the most when you feel like you have to have a filter?
Inside your head. Exactly. All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing. So I've asked about who to interview. So we'll connect with Brandy. We'll get an introduction and bring her onto the show. And I think it's time to wrap it up here. So thanks so much for sharing your time. This has been a blast, Karan. I really learnt a lot more about how the back behind the curtain of your events and how you plan for them. There's obviously a lot of work goes in, both the planning and the structure and the systems that you have in place, and then also the follow-up, which is really important, and you've highlighted that as well. So congratulations on doing that. Keep doing the great work you're doing. I'm looking forward to the next event I'm coming on, which is soon, and I've really enjoyed our conversation today. All the best.
Thank you so much for having me, my friend. And listen, if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't already left Jurgen a review, and now it's been over 300 episodes, now would be a great time to leave him a review. You don't even have to mention this episode, but just mention that you love hearing his voice. Subscribe to him. I know how important that is. And please leave a review, not for me, but just for the guy who's brought you over 300 episodes of amazing value. So Jurgen, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Karan. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed that engaging and wonderfully meaningful conversation with Karan and took something away from his episode. I love the questions he shared with us to prompt meaningful conversations and the idea to ask a lot more questions and having the courage to say, I don't know. Now, you could add yet to that. I'm curious to know what you took away from Karan's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which you can find at innovabiz.co/Jube. That is Jube. All lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Jube. You'll also find contact information for getting in touch with Karan there, as well as links to the Jube website, the Human to Human podcast, his social media pages, and the other resources that we spoke about in today's conversation. Karan suggested that we have a conversation with Brandy Lefso of Evio Beauty Group on a future InnovaBuzz podcast episode. So Brandy, keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Karan Nijhawan. Tune in again to the next episodes of the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we've got even more fantastic guests lined up, including Jamie J. of Bottleneck Virtual Assistants and Jonathan Green of Serve No Master. Thanks for listening to this episode. Make sure you subscribe to the show to be reminded of new episodes. It's free to subscribe. Leave a review if you like. Even if you don't like me, I'm okay with that. I'm asking you to leave a review because it helps other people find this show. Go to innovabiz.co to join our marketing transformation community and access a free gift my team and I made for you. It's the Marketing Master Mini Class. We want to give you everything you need to transform your marketing into a human-centered, relationship-focused growth engine. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember, be awesome and keep innovating.